Vengeance!
Welcome to another video, guys. Today we're gonna have another top 5 to see what the meta looks like after several weeks in the new expansion. Honestly, not much has changed since my last top 5, and most of the top 5 decks from there are pretty much on the top right now as well. But I'm gonna show you 5 other decks that are still doing pretty nice, and you can use those to climb into higher ranks. I'm gonna give you a mulligan for each deck, its win rates, a mulligan guide for it as always, and if it's worth crafting it, as well as what other decks from that class are still worth trying out. And I will finish up with the other decks that are also doing quite alright in the new meta. I would really appreciate it if you drop a like and a subscribe to the video, because we're really closing into 10,000 subscribers and it would be awesome if we reach it sooner rather than later. Are you whoring for subs again? No. Don't lie to me. Go to your corner. Aww. Now let's get into the first deck. Last time I showed you Soul Demon Hunter and he was doing pretty good, and still is, but Aggro Demon Hunter is also doing quite alright, if not better. Can I come back now? No, your play is trash. The deck is really hyper aggressive and it has a lot of early game drops, and most of the cards are under free mana, with the exclusion of Polkit and the 2 skulls. You have 2 game plans with this deck, where you first try to zerg the opponent with all of your early game minions, which prove to be enough for most classes, but if that doesn't work, and if you're against slower, harder matchups, which have early game removal, you can rely on your Polkit into the skull, which brings you another cheap skull and a lot of 0 drops, which are usually free mana. That way you can cheat out a ton of damage with your Ultras, because you're gonna have a lot of 0 mana cards with which you can do a lot of damage. This archetype seems to be doing better against the ETC control warriors, so it has that going for it, which is nice. The version I'm showing you is the one with the neophyte, because it feels a lot better to drop an actual minion instead of the mana burn, which is the other version that's actually doing quite alright in top 1000 legend as well. Basically, you have to decide how you want to be taking your opponent, because in one game plan you have to really go all out with your early game minions, trying to tempo out as much damage as you can, but in the other case it would be better for you to stop playing your cards, because that way you will be able to generate a lot more damage from your Ultras. Other than that, the deck is pretty self-explanatory. Just be careful not to screw up with the Dreadlord's Bite like I did, and remember, it's actually an outcast card. For the matchups, it's not gonna be too great for you against the other Demon Hunter archetypes, including the one with the mana burn. And again, control an ETC warrior ain't no picnic too, with about 40% win rate for you. But other than that, everything else is pretty deep in the green, so you should be good. For the mulligan, if you're going first, usually a couple of good 1-drops and a Wriggling Horror is your best bet. You could also consider keeping Polkit if you think that's gonna be the way you're gonna be winning that game. And if you're having a couple of 1-drops, you can definitely try keeping Voracious Reader as well, because usually by turn 3 you will be able to draw quite a few cards with her. When you're going second, like a lot of decks, the win rate for you is going to be a lot lower. But again, your game plan pretty much remains the same. You want a few of your good 1-drops, your Cult Neophyte is gonna be pretty good for you so you can stall out your opponent a bit, and again, Wriggling Horror can be great if you have what to buff with it. Is the deck worth crafting? Well, it's not too expensive, so yeah, why not? Polkit is a card that gets utilized in plenty of decks, and Ultras was free, right? So it's actually quite the cheap deck to pilot, as long as Blizz doesn't try nerfing it to the ground again, even though I still think it might survive it. Other than that, as you know, Soul Demon Hunter is still pretty good, as long as you don't face too many warriors, and you can check out my guide and coaching sessions with it too. Also, there is a Demon Hunter that utilizes the OTK potential with Ilginat, but that one is not too consistent, so try it on your own risk. Now let's talk about Broom Paladin. This version is actually utilizing 5 of the new cards, which is a lot more than the Broom Paladin I showed you last time, which is also still doing pretty good. We have Red Scale Dragon Tamer here, so you can draw some dragon healing for you. We have 2 of the Hammer of Narus, and we also have Silas, which is kind of a weird card, and I'm not really totally on board with it, but I guess it kinda works. With it, you should always be able to steal something quite alright from your opponent, and give him a Silverhand recruit or something from your first day of school instead, so I guess it does have some merit running it. Other than that, the list is pretty standard. You have your Libram package, you have your Penflingers and Brooms obviously, a ton of draw engines, and your Lady Liadrin for the refill. The deck is still doing pretty solid, and you can definitely get a lot of wins with it, as long as you're up for the challenge and you want to be doing a lot of math and a lot of APM. There's not too much stats involved here, but from what we can see here is that Secret Rogue is the only deck that is gonna be somewhat troublesome for you. Aggro Demon Hunter is gonna be a 50-50, and anything else is plenty above 55%. Other than that, Evolve Shaman can also be somewhat troublesome, close to 50% win rate for you, and Control Warlock might be a problem as well, where the win rate is down about 42%. For the mulligan, when you're going first, you're gonna want your obvious Aldor Attendant, and also first day of school. If you already have a 1-drop, a buff wouldn't hurt ever. And depending on the matchup, you also might want to have your Barrow early, so you can stall out potential aggro matchups. Also, Salad Sprite is pretty good to have, and if you're already curving out somewhat decently, you can even keep the Eldor Truthseeker. When you're going second, it's kinda the same situation. You still want your Eldor, your First Day, Hand of Adal, but you can also keep your Red Scale Dragon Tamer. Don't get baited into keeping your Penflinger, and even your Broom most of the time, unless you really need some rush action against aggro matchups, but instead wait for them to draw them with the Salad Pride. Is it worth the craft? Again, it's not a very expensive deck since Silas is free and Lady Liadrin is pretty core for Paladin anyway, and if you like Baroth and Warrior and other Paladin decks, he's also not a bad craft too. So other than that, there are no other legendaries you will need to be crafting, so it's kinda fine. The win rate is pretty good, so as long as they don't nerf it too much somehow, it should be fine. And it will remain relevant till April next year most probably. Like I said, Libram Pure Paladin is still doing very good, but there's also this new Dual Paladin, which is also kinda doing alright, so you might wanna try that as well. Kazul says it's fun, but I don't trust that kid. Next up, let's talk about Highlander Hunter again. I'm basically showing you the exact same deck from last time, but we only have one new card in here, which is the Rhino. Here we have the standard secret package again, but you can't tinker with it, so people can't play as easily against you as they wish to. If you're seeing too many aggro decks, maybe fitting in an explosive trap wouldn't be so bad. Again, this deck curves out really low, with only 5 cards above 3 mana, finishing off with Dino Tamer Bran and the new Rhino we spoke about. It's still doing quite fine, and it's actually doing good against the new Control Warriors too most of the time, so it has that going for it. Speaking of matchups, let's see the rest. The only bad matchups would be Aggro Demon Hunter and other versions of Highlander Hunter too, but other than that, it's looking pretty good. When going first with the deck, you will want to have a good 1-drop and a good 2-drop, and Poke It can also be pretty good for you. When you're going second, the new secret weapon is gonna be pretty good for you, and you can definitely keep Innerpid, because you will always have a way to trigger him too, especially if you have the Adorable Infestation. Zephrys is a keep in either case, and you can even keep Petting Zoo if you're gonna have some secrets going on for you early. This one also seems pretty decent to craft, but keep in mind, a lot of the cards for it are rotating in April, so that's gonna be pretty bad for you in that case, if you already don't have the Highlander package basically. Not to mention it's not such a cheap deck anyway. Other than that, Face Hunter is doing alright, and there's also a secret Face Hunter version out there too, so you might wanna try those. Next up we have Secret Rogue, which rose in popularity and in power quite a lot again. The list doesn't really run too many new cards, but it runs Swindle and the new combo Foxy Fraud. We do have some innovation in the secret area as well, where Ambush rose in popularity again, since all of the aggros. With the new Foxy, you can do crazy early Edwins like never before, and Swindle draws you consistently as well, so that's pretty cool for it. You have your Hanar for crazy secret values, Jandis for some bamboozle action, and you have your questing adventurers for those mini Edwin situations. With Pharaoh Cat you can get plenty of good reborns, and the Wand Thief gives you a lot of good mage spells too. For the matchups, Warriors would be your worst enemy, Evolve Shaman is not gonna be great, and Soul Demon Hunter ain't no picnic either. But as you can see, everything else looks fine. When you're going first, Cat would be your best keep, along with the Foxy Fraud, and you can even keep an Ambush, or maybe even an Edwin. But you have to have a good setup for it, with a Shadow Step, or a Foxy Fraud, or a Backstab, or something, so you can make it at least a 6/6 on turn 3 or something. Same goes for Miscreant if you have a way to combo him early. When you're on the coin, Edwin becomes even more appealing, especially with Foxy Fraud, and Preparation, and even Shadow Step. Jandis can also make a decent keep for you if you're curving well into her. This is another deck that it's not so expensive if you already have Jandis in there, because she is utilized in plenty of other decks too. Edwin is a must for any rogue player, and Hanar is also a pretty decent craft, so other than that, there are no other legendaries here. Weapon Rogue and Stealth Rogue are still doing fine too, so you could try those faster decks as well. And the last deck here is gonna be Control Warrior without the ETC combo this time. Control Warrior is doing quite alright in the current meta, since there's a lot of aggro decks that can't really do anything against it, especially with its arsenal of early game board control and armor gain. The new Minefield card serves as an excellent early game board control tool, but you can also use it for some huge armor gains if you're missing your risky skipper for some reason. The Bulwark of Aznath buys you plenty of time against a lot of the decks out there right now, and you're also running Katoon, so you have some late end game plan as well. You have Rattlegore and Deathwing for your big minions, and with Kargat you can get the Prime later too. You have plenty of ways to draw cards with Ankar and your Battle Rage and your shield blocks too. Not to mention the Corsair caches, which can give you even a 1/5 Bulwark instead. This deck seems to be a lot easier than the ETC combo deck, because here it's a lot easier not to misplay. With the ETC, a lot of people were misplaying by holding onto the OTK combo no matter what. Whereas, a lot of the times you should just be gaining crazy amounts of armor, and the opponent will not be able to go through it regardless. Here you don't have that misplay potential, cause there's nothing else you would like to be keeping your mercenaries and armor smiths for. Although you could be using the mercenaries for bigger Deathwings or bigger Rattlegores or stuff like that early on. But again, it's a lot harder to misplay with it. For the matchups, control decks like Control Priest and Control Warlock would be a problem for you. And like I said, Highlander Hunter and Pure and Pentlinger Paladin are also not the greatest matchups for you. Secret Rogue could prove to be a problem, but if you're facing plenty of Demon Hunter decks, you will have no problem there. For the mulligan, it's pretty tricky and the stats don't help much either. You really have to think hard what you will be needing against each matchup and mulligan accordingly, so I guess practice will make perfect for you. Is it worth the craft? I don't know man, 50k dust. That sounds like a lot. It's a good deck, but the games are very long, so you really need to ask yourself if you're willing to spend that much time in Hearthstone nowadays. It's consistent, sure, but the games will be like 20 minutes every time. Other than that, there's Enrage Warrior, and ETC Warrior is still doing quite alright too. For the classes I didn't mention, for Druid, we have Clown Druid, which is doing somewhat okay, even though not with too many games. And in High Legend, Malygos Druid is doing fine. For Mage, you have Secret Mage, No Minion Mage, and Highlander Mage, but they're all with a very low sample size, and in High Legend, there is literally no good mage right now, so keep that in mind. For Priest, you can go with Control, or Big Resurrect Priest, or even Highlander Priest, but none of them are going too much above 53% win rate. For Shaman, Evolve and Enhancement are your best bets, which are still pretty good decks and are even worthy in this top 5, but I already talked about them in the last one, so there's that. Totem Shaman is somewhat doing okay too. For Warlock, Zoo is the best performing archetype right now, but you can also go with Control or even Galakrond. So that's gonna be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this a little bit more natural and less off-topic top 5 format. Like I said, a like and a subscribe would really help, so feel free to do so. Thanks for watching. I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.